Well, how are people consuming Islam now? How are we learning Islam? We're learning it from 30-second TikTok motivations, right? Get Mufti Menk will say something, or I'll say something, or somebody else will say something, and you're like, motivated, right? And then you go back to demotivated. I need a motive. Oh, you know what this is? This is actually a lack of hikmah.
This new short series is based on the findings of Dr. Saqib Hussain in his PhD thesis, Wisdom in the Quran, which was summarized and presented by Ustad Nouman in front of a live audience. The link to the full paper is in the description.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. So we're going to start with early definitions of wisdom. This is just FYI. There are, in the early Islam, in the first century, you could say, for the most part, Muslims were not giving, you don't find any record of Muslims saying, here's what hikmah means. It seems like it was a natural understanding. And the earliest record we find is Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, who died in the year 150, or in the Gregorian calendar 767, so pretty early, about the little bit after the first century. And Abdul Razak al-Sana'ani, who died in 211. So you're realizing that it's been quite a while before some discussion about what hikmah means is happening, at least the record of it. So let's see what these people had to say early on about hikmah. This is Muqatil. He had 4 opinions. I'm going to translate them for you. Al-fahmu wal-ilmu wa fi ba'd al-asyaq fahmu al-Qur'an as-sahih. He's saying the ability to understand something and to learn and to know something is actually hikmah. So he's actually considering hikmah, if you want to put it in simplest terms, the ability to think and understand something is hikmah. Using your head, common sense, right? And the acquisition of knowledge. That's what he calls hikmah. The second meaning of hikmah he uses is an-nubuwah, prophethood, because the Quran uses hikmah for prophethood. Then he uses the word hikmah. He says in some places in the Quran, Allah used it to describe previous books. So the Injil was called hikmah, for example, in the Quran. Or, for example, Allah says about Dawud alayhi salam, the Zabur, He says Allah gave him hikmah. And finally, hikmah is also sunnah. And this is an important one. What does sunnah mean? Let me ask you guys, what does sunnah mean? Yes, the practice, the normative practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet's habits, the Prophet's behaviors, the Prophet's patterns sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his speech, in his worship, in his, the way he walked into the home, the way he sat, the way he, washed, etc. All of those things would be quantified as sunnah, right? But the word sunnah in the early Islam years, in the first couple of 100 years, the word sunnah meant 3 things. It meant 3 things, and you guys are familiar with one of them. And one of them is the practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's one meaning of sunnah. Another meaning of sunnah was Islam itself. The whole religion, all of its rules, the entire thing was actually called what? Sunnah, actually. So it wasn't restricted to the Prophet's practice. The entire religion was actually called sunnah, or it was another word for law also in that sense. Sunnah was another word for law. So when people, imagine in the first century, if somebody asked, hey, so do you believe in the sunnah? They weren't saying, do you believe in the practice of the Prophet? It could also mean, do you believe in Islam? That's what it could mean. Then there's a third meaning of the word sunnah, which is really interesting. It's the way that Allah uses the word in the Quran also. Sunnah means the way Allah does things throughout history. Also means the traditions of different societies. So the sunnah of the Arabs, the sunnah of the pharaohs, the sunnah of the ancient Greeks, the sunnah of this tribe or the sunnah of this family, and also the sunnah of Allah. You know what that means? The way the Arabs cook is this way. This is their sunnah in cooking. The Afghanis, this is their sunnah in grilling the meat, right? And this is Allah's sunnah in how He deals with different nations. This is Allah's sunnah for justice. So the sunnah was used for not just for the Prophet ﷺ, not just for Islam, but also throughout history. So when Muqatil says in the first couple of centuries, that this can refer to the Sunnah, what he could mean is the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, but he could also mean learning lessons from history, or learning about how God dealt with different nations, and thinking about that, and that will give you wisdom. So they had a very broad definition of what wisdom means. The other figure that I wanted to introduce you to is Abdul Razzaq al-San'ani, and he quotes even earlier people, Qatada for example, who died shortly after the 1st century. His definition of hikmah was the Quran and understanding the Quran. Another very early opinion was the intellect is hikmah, understanding is hikmah, was sadidu min al-qawl min ghayr al-nubuwah. Very interesting. When you say good things that don't have anything to do with prophethood. So wise sayings, right? Wise sayings that are not actually from Islam or from revelation, but they're just wise sayings. They're also hikmah. And then, of course, Qatada later on also has an opinion on the hikmah being the Quran and the Sunnah meaning the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. This is really interesting because early on, what I'm trying to show you is early on in Islamic history, when people thought about the word hikmah, they thought about many things. They thought about, among those many things, was the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So it was not exclusive, it was one of many things that they used to think about. Okay? Now, what happens really cool, something really cool in one of the ayat of Surah Al-Ahzab. If you don't know much about Surah Al-Ahzab, I'll tell you a little bit. Surah Al-Ahzab talks a lot about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, our mothers, and his family life, the Prophet's family life, okay? And it's a unique place in the Quran where Allah talks to our mothers directly. He talks to the mothers of the believers directly. And part of that, he says that you should obey what Allah has given you from His ayat, min ayatillahi wal hikmati. I'll tell you something, specifically about the ayah in Surah Al-Ahzab. Allah says, follow the ayat of Allah and follow the wisdom. And, Qatada saw this and said, oh, well, the wives of the Prophet, they were seeing the Prophet in the house. They were seeing him wake up. They were seeing him eat. They were seeing him sleep. They were seeing him in his most intimate moments, in his most private moments. They were with him. So they saw a wisdom from the Prophet that nobody else saw. Right? Because that's not public information. That's private home information. It's behind closed doors. And so that's why Qatada, in this particular ayah, used hikmah and described it as the sunnah of the Prophet because the mothers of the believers had special access to that dimension of wisdom. And of course, the Prophet's practice is wisdom. So here's the overview so far. The classical mufassirun did not seek a unified meaning for hikmah. Instead, like Muqatil, they used contextual information, meaning how did Allah use hikmah in this ayah? How did He use it in that ayah? That's contextual information, okay? To choose from a range of possibilities, whichever seemed to best fit the verse. So it wasn't like, oh, now I know what hikmah means. Every time I see hikmah in the Quran, it means exactly this. That is not how they used to think. Oh, hikmah in this surah, in this ayah means this. And it means something else over here. And it means something else over here. And it means something else over here. Which is very understandable. Let me put it in the stupidest example I can think of, so it's easy for you to get. When you say the word cool, you could be talking about a whole bunch of different things and use the word cool. It's not always referring to the same thing, isn't it? So it's something admirable, but the thing that's admirable may refer to different things, okay? Now, this is probably the most comprehensive summary. I'm grateful to Saqib for putting this in his paper. Al-Bahr al-Muhit is a tafsir of the Quran. He collected all the different views from scholars that try to define hikmah in one place. So this is a collection of all the different opinions that have existed in early Islam of how people thought about hikmah. I'll translate this quickly for you. Just listen to the diversity of views. Ash-Shari'ah, the law of Islam. Wa bayanul ahkam, and the clarifying the rules of Allah. Al-Hikmah as-Sunnah. Wa bayanul Nabi ash-Shara'i. It's the Sunnah, and it's how the Prophet explained the laws of Islam is also hikmah. وَقَالَ مَالِكْ وَأَبُو رَزِينَ الْحِكْمَةُ الْفِقْهُ فِي الدِّينِ. And Malik and Abu Razin said, hikmah means understanding in the religion, developing a good understanding of the religion. الْفَهْمُ الَّذِي هُوَ سَجِيُّهُ وَنُورٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, and it's the understanding that beautifies the religion, and it's a light from Allah in which you can walk. وَقَالَ مُجَاهِدٌ الْحِكْمَةُ فَهْمُ الْقُرْآنِ. Mujahid says hikmah means understanding the Quran. وَقَالَ مُقَاتِلُ الْعِلْمُ وَالْعَمَلِ بِهِ. And Muqatil says it's knowledge and it's acting on that knowledge. We discussed that one before, didn't we? Knowledge and acting on it. Then he says, لا يكون الرجل حكيما حتى يجمعهما. He says a person cannot be wise until they combine both of those things, knowing and acting. الحكم والقضاء. It also means judging. Hikmah means the ability to make the right judgments. وَقِيلَ مَا لَا يُعْلَمُ إِلَّا مِنْ جِهَةِ الرَّسُولِ. It's also been said that hikmah is something that can never be known except if it comes from the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then it gets broad. So far it sounds like it's the Quran, it's the Prophet, that's what hikmah is, right? Now you'll see a more broad definition. كُلُّ كَلِمَةٍ وَعَظَتْكَ. Anything you hear that gave you good advice is hikmah. Your mom gave you advice, hey, listen, just apologize. Hey, listen, just talk to him. Do this, do that. And that was good advice. It helped you, right? That was hikmah. That wasn't, oh, give me the ayah, mom. Where did you get that from? Which book? No, it's good advice. Just follow it. Or it might even be your dentist told you better start flossing. That's hikmah because it benefited you. So now the definition is getting broad. Okay? أو دعتك إلى مكرمة أو نهتك عن قبيح. Anything that when you followed it, it took you to something dignified and or kept you from going into something ugly, prevented ugliness from your life. فهي حكمة, it's hikmah. قال بعضهم الحكمة هنا الكتاب. So other people said hikmah here just means the Quran itself, meaning, Allah says He teaches the book and the wisdom. I mentioned that to you, the book and the wisdom. Some people said, oh, the wisdom also means the book. He's just emphasizing it. So it's almost as if He teaches them the book and wisdom from the book. That's how they interpreted it. وقال أبو جعفر محمد بن يعقوب كل صواب من القول ورث فعلا صحيحا فهو حكمة. Any good thing you hear that leads to the right kind of action is hikmah. الحكمة جند من جنود الله. Hikmah is one of the armies from Allah's armies. يرسلها الله إلى قلوب العارفين. He sends the armies into the hearts of those who know Him حتى يروح عنها وهج الدنيا, until they stop becoming impressed with the glitter of this world. So hikmah means people don't fall for shallow things because it's one of the things that protects your heart from becoming shallow, right? So an easy example, so we're not just reading something from several centuries ago. You can think about right now, you posted something online about how you are, living a life of sabr and tawakkul. Because people like to post their spiritual status nowadays so that because the angels don't check you, they now check your Facebook to see if you're in a state of sabr. So you take a picture of yourself. I don't know how you take a picture of yourself making dua, but people do apparently. And then when tawakkul in Allah is all you have left. And then they post that on their Instagram and they put a little, I don't know why every one of these videos or pictures and these people's stories, they have this slow, it's supposed to be Islamic music, I think, but it sounds like somebody dying slowly. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah? So they'll put that up. But now that you put it up, of course you put it up for the sake of Allah. Yeah. And now that you put that up, you keep checking how many teary-eyed, round, yellow faces did you get? How many hearts underneath it? How many mashallah? How many, and your entire, your perception of value is now associated with something so shallow. How many comments did I get? How many views did I get? How many thumbs up did I get? How many making so much dua for you did I get? People want to broadcast the state of their heart to the world. And this, by the way, on a side note, he says, hikmah means that you don't get hypnotized by the glitter of this world. And one of the major kinds of glitter in the world today, especially for the younger audiences here, you guys grew up and you don't even know a world that existed outside of social media. And social media is an amazing tool. It's an incredible tool. In fact, it revolutionized the world. But for many of you, you value yourself based on your virtual existence. Your entire definition of yourself comes from the filtered images you're putting on and how people are acknowledging your existence online. And if you're not posting something, if you're not posting a picture of the slice of pizza that you're eating, that somehow someone out there is going to cry tears wondering what happened to that slice of pizza. You must contribute to the world. And this idea that I have to make my presence known, this obsession is leading you, it's even shaping the way you think about Islam, to the point where I have to become an Islamic influencer for the sake of Allah. I have nothing to say, I've learned nothing, but I feel like you guys just follow Allah, okay? For the sake of Allah. And this is, hikmah is you can see something that's fluff, it's worthless, it's just glitter, it's temporary, and you don't get caught up in it. Like it doesn't attract you. You don't feel a void. You're not drawn to it. And that's a pretty accurate description of hikmah, I would argue. And he said it. This is one of the armies of God that he puts into the hearts of those who truly know until he removes from their hearts the want of the glitter of worldly things. It's pretty accurate, And then he says, وَقِيلَ هِيَ وَضْعُ الْأَشْيَاءِ مَوَاضِعَهَا. This is an important one. It says, hikmah means putting things where they belong. Putting things in their rightful place. وَقِيلَ كُلُّ قَوْلٍ وَجَبَ فِعْلُهُ. Anything, any word, any speech, any counsel that you must act on. وَهَذِهِ الْأَقْوَالِ فِي الْحِكْمَةِ كُلُّهَا مُتَقَارِبَةً. All of these definitions of wisdom, he says they're all very close to each other. وَيَجْمَعُ هَذِهِ الْأَقْوَالِ قَوْلًا. But these are, you can combine them into two main statements. Al-Quran wal-akhar as-sunnah. The Quran and the Sunnah. لِأَنَّهَا الْمُبَيِّنَةِ لِمَنْ بَهَمَ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. Because these are the ones, the Sunnah is the one that clarifies what's in the law. وَالْمُظْهِرَ لِوُجُوهِ الْأَحْكَامِ. And it helps you understand the laws of Allah. Now, I'm about to wrap this up. We're done with the definition part of hikmah. The conclusion is two things. There's two kinds of hikmah. There's a hikmah that comes from Allah, and there's a hikmah that comes from inside you. There's a hikmah you already have, and I'm going to explain the one that comes from Allah. I think everybody knows. That's the Quran, that's Revelation, that's the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. We know that one. The hikmah that comes from inside you is the one that I want to talk to you about a little bit, because you're like, but I'm stupid. I have hikmah? And somebody even came to me, they didn't say they're stupid, they said, but how are you supposed to get hikmah? Here's the Quran's answer to that. Actually, how are you supposed to get a stronger back? How are you supposed to get stronger legs? How are you supposed to get a stronger mind? How are you supposed to get stronger arms? How are you supposed to get better stamina? What are you supposed to do? Tell me. Exercise? Eat right? How are you supposed to get better at mathematics? Practice. How are you supposed to get better at a sport? Play more, learn more, exercise it. But your legs are already there. They're just not strong enough. But they're there. It's not like you have to create your legs. They're there. You just have to start using them now and start running. And the more you run, the stronger they'll get. The more stamina you will develop. Your lungs are already there, but they don't have good capacity. You get on a treadmill for 3 minutes and you're right? But it's not like you don't have lungs. You have them, but you haven't exercised them, so they haven't become what? Stronger. The Quranic argument would then be, you already have the basic wisdom inside you, but you just haven't made it what? Stronger. You haven't enabled it. You haven't activated it. You haven't put it to use. Anything Allah gives you, when you don't use it, it becomes weaker. Allah gave me eyes. If I taped one of my eyes for 6 months, I can almost guarantee you I would be blind in that eye. You don't use it, you lose it. Patients that are lying in bed in a coma for 6 months, a year, they can't stand up after they get up because they have muscle atrophy. They haven't used that muscle. Allah has given me something inside me, the ability to make good decisions. He already gave me that, but I haven't been using it. And the less I use it, the weaker that ability becomes. And then I start telling myself, I don't even have that ability. I don't have that ability. And one of the most amazing, shocking examples of that I see nowadays is young people coming and telling me, Ustad, say something to motivate me. I'll do a 3-hour lecture, and at the end of it, somebody will say, Ustad, can you just say something to motivate me, please? All this time I was making pakora. What was I doing? Something to motivate. But then I ask myself this question, when you say something to motivate me, or I need motivation, please give me something to and then you have all this like Islamic, well, how are people consuming Islam now? How are we learning Islam? We're learning it from 30-second TikTok motivations, right? Get Mufti Menk will say something, or I'll say something, or somebody else will say something, and you're like, motivated, right? And then you go back to demotivated. I need a motive. Oh. You know what this is? This is actually a lack of hikmah. And why am I saying it's a lack of hikmah? That means I'm not driven enough within myself. It's as if I don't possess the ability to have strong will. Somebody has to give me will and push me forward. And unless they do, I can't move on my own. I'm incapable of my own. I need somebody else to inspire me. I need somebody else to push me. And I ask myself the question, when Allah talks about Ashabul Kahf in the Quran, those young people in the cave, who was their motivation? Like, who was their, did they say, hey man, I'm feeling really low right now. Is there, anybody got a connection? Let me just watch some motivational videos, at least a tech talk or something as we go up this mountain. It's getting pretty high. What motivated them? Something inside them that's very powerful was already there for them to be able to challenge their entire society even at a young age. Isn't that true? It's not like something that came from the heavens or they became prophets. They were just regular young guys. That's who they were. But they were motivated. What I'm trying to tell you is, it's actually a very empowering message in the Quran that the fundamental hikmah, the fundamental wisdom, the fundamental nature, good nature, and the ability to do the right thing is already inside you. It's already inside you. I'll tell you something also that I've just become, I've become less filtered. I'm not as polite as I used to be, but that's helpful. I'm not rude, but I'm direct. So this young lady came to me. I was in Germany. A young lady came up to me after the program and she said to me, Ustad, why don't we talk about leadership for women? Women should have leadership, and they should be given roles of leadership, and they have the right to have leadership too, and we don't discuss this. And I was like, you're about my daughter's age, so I'm going to talk to you as if I'm talking to my own daughter. Is that okay with you? She says, yes, it's okay. I was like, you sure it's okay? Because I'm going to talk to you like you're my daughter. And she said, yes, it's okay. I was like, okay. I know women around the world that are in leadership positions. I know women that run multi-million-dollar companies. I know women that have 10,000 employees. I know women that are helping feed tens of thousands of people around the world. I know women that are running orphanages. I know women that are running hospitals. I know women that are in government. I know women around, and you know what they all have in common? They never talk about leadership. They just do it. So, and this advice goes for men and for women. You want to talk about it or you want to do something? So you know what? If you're talking about how important it is for you to have leadership right now, you'll still be talking about this 10 years from now until you learn to figure out what it is that you want to take the lead on and stop waiting for someone to open the door for you so you can walk through it. If there's a mountain in front of you and there's no road, learn to climb. That's what leadership is. You overcome obstacles. You don't care if there's a wall in front of you. You start digging or you start climbing. That's what you do. There's a mentality. And nobody's coming to help you. You have the ability within yourself. You have that. And so we have to develop a new sense of strength. By the way, speaking of this idea of hikmah, hikmah I told you comes from hukum, which is the jawline, remember? Someone who has hikmah actually has strength of will. They have strong will. When they've made up their mind about something, they've made it up. Now, another example of where hikmah has failed us, lack of hikmah has failed us, is people constantly question their intentions. Ustad, I pray, but I'm not sure if I'm really praying for the sake of Allah or not. Why are you not sure? I don't know, because, your intention could go... Why are your intentions so weak? When did your intentions... why did you come here? Well, I came here to learn something, but I'm not sure because I also laughed. So now did I come here because I enjoyed a joke? Or did I come for the sake of Allah? Was I laughing for the sake of Allah? Or was I laughing for the sake of the dad jokes you made? I don't know that if... Shut up! Stop torturing yourself. Develop strength of will. Are you clear about why you're doing something? And once you do that, stop doubting yourself constantly. This is actually an OCD we've developed in Islam. Constantly reinvestigate yourself as if your intentions are not sincere. By the way, you will know when your intentions are not sincere. You will know that very, very well. You're not going to have to say, are my intentions sincere? You're not going to have to do that. You'll know. You'll know something's messed up. You know you're chasing clout. You know you're chasing views. You know you're chasing praise. You're chasing attention. You're chasing a rank. You will know it. You will just know it on your own. Anyhow, let's now conclude today's discussion. So we're going to talk about two prophets, or one prophet and one non-prophet, but they have something in common, and I'm going to show it to you, because from here on, we're not talking about hikmah in theory. We're going to actually look at actual places in the Quran and discuss hikmah. So the first place we're going to look at is the story of Dawood alayhi salam. And here's the place you can find it. Many of you have Quran apps on your phones, so you can open it up, inshallah. I'll open it up too, and I'll read it from here with you, okay? So this is Surah number 38, Sad, and ayah number 17. Okay. اصبر على ما يقولون واذكر عبدنا داود ذا الأيد إنه أواب. Be patient, the Prophet is being told, be patient over whatever they say to you, and remember our servant Dawood, who had might, he had the one of great might, he kept coming back to Allah. إنه أواب. إنا سخرنا الجبال معه. We subdued, we overpowered the mountains along with him. يسبحنا بالعشي والإشراق. They used to praise Allah. The mountains used to praise Allah along with him in the night and in the morning time. وَالطَّيْرَ مَحْشُورًا. And the birds used to gather around for him. كُلٌّ لَهُ أَوَّابٌ. They used to keep coming back towards him. وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ. This is the part we're interested in now for this discussion. And we strengthened his kingdom. وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَةَ. And we gave him wisdom. Because our discussion is hikmah, right? Allah says we strengthened him, his kingdom, and we gave him wisdom. وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. And we gave him decisive speech, powerful speech. Okay, now that Allah has said he's given him wisdom, he's going to tell us a story about him. And I'm not going to go into the details of that story, but I'll give you the gist. Dawood alayhi salam was in his quarters, and Allah says, هَلْ أَتَاكَ نَبَأُ الْخَصْمِ. Did the news of the arguing groups come to you? إِذْ تَصَوَّرُوا الْمِحْرَابِ. The Dawood alayhi salam was a king, and kings live in castles. And the king's quarters are usually higher up inside the castle, in the more secure area. And he was up in his quarters praying, and mihrab is the corner of the house where it's private, where you pray. And he turns around from the prayer, and he sees a bunch of people you can imagine, in his bedroom. They're in his inner quarters. So you can imagine, like in America, there's the White House, right? And the White House has extra layers of security. They've got snipers on the roof, and they've got security guards and dogs, and they've got all this kind of stuff, right? And there's a presidential residence inside. And the president comes out of the bathroom, and there's 6 guys sitting there. Hey, we got a question, Mr. President. Like, if somebody made it through all those layers of security, what does that mean? They're going to kill you. How could they get through all those layers of security and be inside your presidential bedroom? You understand? So he turns around and he sees these people. إِذْ دَخَلُوا عَلَى دَاوُد. They came into Dawood's company in the mihrab. فَفَزِعَ مِنْهُمْ. He was terrified of them. He was shocked. Like, what's going on here? Right? And by the way, Dawood alayhi salam is not just a king, he's a military leader. And military leaders have enemies. And if they see someone just inside their private quarters, they know this is going to be an assassination attempt. So they say, لا تخف خصمان بغى بعضنا على بعض. No, don't be afraid. We just have an issue. We just want you to give us your advice about it. One of the ways I think about the stories in the Quran is I try to place myself in that situation. So I imagine I finish here and I go back to the hotel I'm staying at and I go in the bathroom of the hotel, wash up, come out of the bathroom, and there's 8 of you sitting on my bed. Ustad, I didn't get a chance to talk to you there, but my cousin works at this hotel and we have a question. You said in one of your videos, I'm like, bro, I'm sorry, bruv. You see how shocking that would be. And how, like right now, I'm not thinking about whether or not to give you the right answer. I'm thinking about whether or not to kick you out of my room, call the police, or run. But the thing that's not on my mind, make yourselves comfortable, guys. No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah, sit there. Yeah. No, put your shoes there. Yeah. I never liked that suitcase. Okay. So he says, وَلَا تُشْطِطْ وَهْدِنَا إِلَى سَوَاءِ الصِّرَاطِ. They say, could you judge between us? And don't give us a bad answer. That's what they say to him. لا تشطط. Don't give us a nonsense answer. And then they say, guide us to the right path. This is my brother. He owns 99 sheep. I only own one of them. وَعَزَّنِي وَقَالَ أَكْفِلْنِيهَا. He says, give me that one you have also. وَعَزَّنِي فِي الْخِطَابِ. And he keeps yelling at me. He keeps intimidating me. He talks to me in a bullying way. Azza means to have power over someone. So he uses his power. 99 sheep means he's wealthier. Means he has more servants. He has more influence. And he uses that influence and talks down to me and says, just give me your sheep, man. Come on, what are you going to do with it? If you were good at the sheep business, you wouldn't have one, okay? Just give it to me. It's better for you. And so he keeps bullying me. By the way, let me give you a new version of this. There's because I just came from Pakistan, so I saw this. There's people, they build these housing complexes, housing communities, gated communities, right? Like DHAs or whatever, right? And they'll build like 5,000 houses. And you're outside these communities with the gates and the security guards and the machine guns, and you're in Pakistan. You know what that means? You're on the highway going this way. There's a guy on a bicycle going this way. There's a guy on a rickshaw going that way. There's a truck going this way. This is the highway, right? But it's truly a freeway, right? I understood the meaning of the word. It's free. It's a freeway. And then you walk through those gates, and all of a sudden you're in California. The streets are clean. Everything's prim and proper. The roads are paved. People are observing traffic laws. There's malls. There's people who think they speak English. There's all kinds of stuff. I went to some of those restaurants just to hear what they think is English. Yaar, what the hell, yaar? Like, I love it. I love it. It tastes better than the food. Anyway, back to the Quran. Okay. Now, what they do is they build these housing developments, and there's one guy who owns this old, ugly little house in the middle, and he doesn't want to sell. He doesn't want to sell his property. So you know what they do? They build all around him, and he can't even get to his house. There's no road, nothing. He can't get there. You got a choice. You could just sell it, because we're going to build them all there. We're going to build whatever there. You know what that is? You've got people that are very powerful. They have a lot of money. And then you have someone who owns something, but he doesn't have power. One has 99. The other just has what? 1. And the ones that have 99 can bully the one that has 1. And that happens in Pakistan. That happens in America. That happens in Australia. That happens in Canada. That happens in the United Kingdom. It happens in Germany. It happens all over the world. Sometimes governments do this to citizens. right? Sometimes business partners do this to other business partners. Sometimes big business does it to small businesses, doesn't it? And so this is a scenario that happens in the world of business all the time. Now listen to the words of Dawud alayhi salam, and I'll get to the point. He says, Dawud alayhi salam says, I'm only quoting a part of it that's relevant for our discussion. وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْخُلَطَاءِ لَيَبْغِي بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Actually, a huge number of people that are mixed together in business relationships, they end up doing wrong to each other. Okay? And from the context, you can tell who does wrong to who. The one who has more ends up doing wrong to the one who has less, right? And the one who has the power to intimidate ends up bullying the other. And this happened. Khulata actually also means people that have lives connected to each other, like family, right? So in families, for example, there's the dad, and he has 6 sons, right? And one of those sons is wealthier or more powerful or politically connected, and the other sons are not. Or 2 of them are more connected, the other 4 are not. And when time comes for the inheritance, you can almost guess who's not going to get their share, right? Because the ones that are connected are going to just take out the ones that are not connected, or they're not going to get anything, right? So this kind of thing plays out. And Dawud alayhi salam says, a lot of times people that are mixed with each other, they end up doing wrong to each other. Okay? This statement that he makes. And then he says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَقَلِيلٌ مَّا هُمْ, except for those who believe and do good deeds, and how few they are. Meaning, a sign of people who truly believe and do good deeds is they don't mess with business deals, right? And he says, how few they are. This statement of Dawud, think about it. This is Allah explaining what hikmah looks like. Allah just said, Allah gave Dawud what? Hikmah. Now people came to him and said, this is our case. And before he judges the case, he says, listen, this happens a lot. But this idea that this happens a lot, where did Dawud get it from? Did he get it from revelation, you think? Or did he get it from dealing with lots of cases? He dealt with lots and lots of cases. He's a ruler. He's head of Bani Israel. He deals with them all the time. He sees many, many, many cases. He's a judge. If you talk to experienced judges, they've seen a lot of stuff. You know, some of the most insightful conversations I've had in my life are with military generals and judges and lawyers. You learn a lot from those people. Like I just tell them, so what have you learned 50 years sitting on the bench? He goes, you can't learn that in a 30-minute conversation. I said, there's always a start. Let's begin. Give me something, right? I learn a lot from people with that kind of experience. What is the Quran actually doing here? It's amazing. The Quran is saying life experience will teach you what? Wisdom. And when Allah says, Allah gave Dawud alayhi salam wisdom, isn't that what he said? He's telling us Allah gave Dawud alayhi salam life experiences that taught him a lot about how people work, how society works, how business partners work, how families work. And that is actually part of the wisdom he's using to understand cases, to understand human behavior. You see what I'm saying? This is actually an incredible case for wisdom. Now, before this, you might think wisdom is something that comes from Allah. Wisdom is something spiritual. Wisdom is something, if you pray a lot, it will come to you. Though that's the spiritual meaning of wisdom. That's there too in the Quran. But in this passage, there's another dimension of wisdom, which we almost think is secular. It's not even religious, it's secular. What is it? His role as a judge, he's seen people do messed up things. And it's taught him a lot. It's taught him a lot. What does that do for a student of the Quran like myself? You know what that does? When I'm studying something in the Quran, I'm studying, for example, there's ayat about divorce. We're going to talk about the ayat of divorce tomorrow a little bit, because they mention wisdom in them too. That's going to be a fun conversation. I'm going to leave right after that. But anyway, but the reason I brought that up is when you look at the ayat or when you look at, divorce cases, and you look at divorce judges and what they have to go through, they have to actually look at real life situations and learn from them. So when I'm studying the ayat of divorce, I actually talk to divorce attorneys. I talk to marital counselors. I talk to psychologists. I talk to people that experience divorces, right? Because they have wisdom that I need to understand these ayat. What kind of wisdom do they have? Life experience. That is an acknowledged form of wisdom in the Quran itself. Through the example of Dawud alayhi salam. Dawud alayhi salam's wisdom is actually life experience. So what I'm saying then is, the Quran is very broad in its definition of wisdom. And we're going to go through each one of those examples of wisdom, highlights a new picture for wisdom. So your grandparents have a lot to teach you from their life experience. The elders in our community are banks of wisdom that nobody's utilizing. What did you learn from your life? You know? And we're not taking advantage of that. There are people in different professions that have learned so many things, that have seen so many things. Like I'll tell you one wisdom I learned. I could never have known it. I met a general from the Navy. Okay, I won't name which Navy, but I met him, and I was at the time I was studying Surah Al-Rahman, and in Surah Al-Rahman Allah mentions Maraj al-Bahrayni yaltaqiyan baynahuma barzakhun la yabghiyan. Right? He mentions the two oceans, the two seas that meet, and he mentions the pearls and the coral. Right? And he mentions the ships that sail. Lahul jawaril munsha'atu fil bahri kal a'lam. And right after that he mentions kullu man alayha fan. Everybody was going to die. Everybody's going to die. So he talked about the oceans, then he talked about dying. And I always thought about, there must be something here that connects oceans with dying. So who better to ask than someone who spent their life on the ocean? So I asked this general, you spent your life at sea, tell me about this ayah. What do you think when you think of this ayah? He says, listen, when a sailor leaves the dock, when the ship leaves the dock, and he's standing on the deck of his ship, there's not a day that the sailor wakes up that the first thought that he has and the last thought that he has is not death. Because you're looking at water, but the sailor is constantly looking at death. At any time, a tsunami can come. The ship can go bad. Something can attack it. A crack in the hull. So anything can happen, right? So they're actually looking at death all the time. And I could never have imagined that there would be such a profound connection between the ocean and death that's so intimate, unless I got that wisdom from someone who spent their life at sea. And they can tell you very intimately like how these ayat are connected to each other. So that's actually one of the most important things that I wanted to give you guys today, is the connection between wisdom and life experience that's been validated in the Quran. The second story, I don't know if we have time for it. Actually, I'll mention that one even more briefly. The second one is going to be spiritual wisdom. Not life experience wisdom, but what? Spiritual wisdom, but not from the Quran, not from revelation, not from prophethood. And that's the example of Luqman. Allah gave Luqman wisdom, he says. But what was the wisdom that after contemplating the world, after thinking about life, after becoming a parent, the wisdom that Luqman reached is you just have to be a grateful person. Anishkur lillah. You have to be a grateful person. Now, anyone who's a parent knows, is life easy or difficult? Life is difficult. Every stage of life comes with its own difficulties. Parenting comes with its own difficulties. As children age, every age of their life comes with its own set of difficulties. And when you think this was the hardest stage, the next stage comes and you're like, no, this is the harder stage. Then when you're changing diapers, you're like, Ya Allah, how many diapers can this child produce? Right? I just want this to end. And that same parent who's dying because the kid wakes up every 2 hours and you need to burp them and you need to clean their poo and all that stuff. 19 years later, I miss the days when I was changing your diapers. You used to be so nice. Now I have to pull up with your nothing. New trial. Luqman has not had an easy life. And his life experience brought him to a spiritual conclusion. What's that spiritual conclusion? Be grateful to Allah. And he says, and whoever can be grateful, what a piece of wisdom. Whoever is grateful is actually grateful for who? What does he say? وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِي نَفْسِهِ. Whoever is grateful is actually grateful for their own benefit. It's incredible. if I can become a grateful person, I will learn to move on from the challenges of my life and I will not be stuck in them. I won't be stuck in them. Something bad happened to me, but I don't relive it every day. I'm not stuck in it. You know why? Because I decided to choose what instead? Gratitude. I'm grateful that it's over. I'm grateful that I've gotten this far. I'm grateful that I passed this stage. Gratitude means that whatever happened in the past, you're looking at the positive side. If you're not looking at the positive side, you can't be grateful. It's impossible. And now that you're looking at the positive side and whatever, even if bad stuff happened, you're choosing to look at the positive, your outlook for the future becomes what? Positive. When you look at what happened in the past and you keep thinking about how terrible it was and and it was horrible, no doubt about it. It was horrible. But if you keep dwelling on that, what kind of mindset do you develop? Something so bad happened, there's no way something good will ever happen to me. Only bad things happen to me. Bad things keep on happening to me. I don't even know what it is. It's your attitude, because you don't have shukr. Because when you have shukr, then you will have the gratitude will benefit first and foremost yourself. وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. Isn't that amazing wisdom? But this is spiritual wisdom. I would even argue this is psychological wisdom. People pay $350 an hour in America to go see a psychologist who will say, you need some positive psychology. I could have just read Surah Luqman, bro. Like, it could have saved me a lot of money and I would have got ajr. Right? And then so this first part of this wisdom is actually about how I should feel towards my experiences and how I should feel towards Allah. Quickly, the second part of wisdom, and I'll end for today, that I'll share with you for today, is when Luqman radiallahu anhu, he tells his son, even the smallest thing, Allah will bring it out. No bad deed is too small. The bottom line, I'm getting to the bottom, I'm not going word by word in linguistics. No bad deed is too what? Small. Even if it's microscopic inside a boulder, Allah will bring it out. Ya'ti biha Allah. Allah is very delicate. Allah is very precise. Don't ever underestimate the power of your bad deeds. And by the way, by extension, don't underestimate the power of your what? Good deeds. Don't think, oh, what's the point of this? I mean, I haven't done something amazing. I'm not an influencer. I don't have millions following me. Study that passage yourself. The ayahs are here. You'll see something. He's telling his son to not make faces at people. He's telling his son to walk with humility. He's telling his son, to be purposeful when he goes somewhere. وَقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيِكَ. And he's telling his son to lower his voice. So he's telling his son to control his temper, to control his attitude, right? To be purposeful, and when he leaves the house, he should have a real purpose, to live a meaningful, purposeful life. Most of these things, he's telling him to control his facial expressions. لَا تُصَعِّدْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ. Don't swell your cheeks at people. Don't look at people like, don't do that. Don't make faces at people. Most of us think these are big things or small things? These are small things. Hajj is a big thing. Haram is a big thing. Some great act of worship is a big thing. Making a face at somebody, that's a small thing. Come on. And in this wisdom, what did he teach his son? The smallest thing, never to underestimate it. And then he makes a list of things people think are small, but they're actually huge. They're huge with Allah. How you walk, how you talk to people, your facial expressions, the way you use your voice, the tone of your voice with people. Inna ankara al-aswati la sawtul hamir. What incredible wisdom. And he learned this from, this is spiritual wisdom, but wisdom he learned without revelation. And by the way, you will meet people that are not Muslim that live by the advice of Luqman. They're kind with people. They are gentle. They are purposeful, right? They don't talk down to others. They don't raise their voice. They have these qualities. Where do they get these qualities from? Sometimes you're like, they don't even have Islam. How come they have these Islamic values? Because Hikmah is universal and Allah can give it to whoever. Hikmah is universal. So with that, inshallah, we conclude today's session. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I hope you guys enjoyed that video clip. My team and I have been working tirelessly to try to create as many resources for Muslims to give them first steps in understanding the Quran all the way to the point where they can have a deep, profound understanding of the Quran. We are students of the Quran ourselves, and we want you to be students of the Quran alongside us. Join us for this journey on bayinatv.com, where thousands of hours of work have already been put in. And don't be intimidated, it's step by step by step, so you can make learning the Quran a part of your lifestyle. There's lots of stuff available on YouTube, but it's all over the place. If you want an organized approach to studying the Quran beginning to end for yourself, your kids, your family, and even among peers, that would be the way to go. Sign up for bayinatv.com.